Hi, I'm Tommaso, and this is the second part of the question and answer video series. At this point, I think it might become a series because questions are coming in. So we will try to reply to all the questions you sent in. First of all, thank you for liking the format. I got a pretty good feedback from it. So yeah, I hope you enjoy. In this episode, we'll try to answer some of the questions that are more related to Broken Tales, the game. And again, I will put them underneath, so you will be able to know what I'm talking about. Please keep in mind I've been asking Alberto's input for some of these answers. I have a lot of notes. I've been asking him, make it a bullet point, make bullet points, because it's easier to read while I'm also speaking, and he definitely just wrote a wall of text. So I will need sometimes to refer to my notes. I will look down. I'm not trying to ignore you, and just checking the notes. But let's get started. So the first question is, can you please include a narrative solo mode? We got several requests about this, and I think we are definitely thinking about it. There is one reason why we waited a bit before introducing a solo mode for Broken Tales, because for how the game plays, you will need to change the kind of stories you're gonna explore. For example, a lot of investigative sessions or scenarios wouldn't work that well if you're playing just with yourself, if you are the only one playing. So we need to kind of figure out a way that you can still take fairy tales to a breaking point, but not make them into some kind of investigation, because at that point you would also spoil the twists for yourself. It would become complicated to handle. We have an idea on how to do that, and I think at this point I can even mention that we are considering that as an advanced stretch goal. So please, if you're interested in the solo mode, it's definitely a possibility, and we're looking into it. Then the second question is, can you talk more about the OSR rules in the Broken Ones? Yeah, this is a fair question. Keep in mind that we're still developing the game. Like, one of the purpose of the Kickstarter is that so we can continue to work on the game. But yeah, so the idea of the OSR rules is that you'll be able to play as normal people, villagers, or anyway citizens that have to face the Broken Ones, or anyway some supernatural force. I think the way we are going to do that is that there's going to be archetypes you can pick between, probably, I don't know, the smuggler, the doctor, the outcast, other archetypes, and they will be weaker than the villains that you can use on the normal mode of the Broken Tales. They will have less gifts, of course, and less powerful gifts. They probably will not have supernatural gifts, but they will have something that is useful for what they need to do. What they will have that we don't have with the villains is that there will be probably a system of bonds with other characters that will be able to support them during their adventures. There's not much else I can say for the moment. We know more or less how we want to write this section, but really honestly, we were waiting for the Kickstarter to happen so that we knew that we could develop that part. But well, there is a plan. I hope you like it. It's going to be probably high mortality, but we also have a solution for that, so that your characters, even if they die, there is still something to do as a player. The next question is, can you give a little more information about dark presences? Are they plot ideas, not as fleshed out as scenarios, elements meant to add to a scenario to mix it up, or something else? So for all intent and purposes, the dark presences are supposed to be very powerful NPCs. And we divide them in 3 different categories. There's going to be the neutral dark presences. They have their own agenda, and they can be both opposing or supporting the hunters. For example, we have a fire eater. It unlocked in the beginning, and he can help you for the right price. But if for some reason you catch his interest, then he might also decide to add you to his own collection. Then we have the adversaries, and these are useful if you want to make a scenario more threatening, more difficult, especially if you have a high number of hunters that are playing in the game. And these are opponents that are developed to be a big problem that the hunters have to deal with. For example, the Puss in Boots, it's going to be this kind of dark presence. And then there's going to be the support dark presences, and they are somewhat related to the order. They have a position in the overall meta plot, even though the game doesn't really have a very developed meta plot. But one of them is the bad orc. He's related to the order, and he will interact with the players to help them. There are others that we unlocked, the wise fox. That I think we call it the cunning fox in the English translation. They will help. They might be bizarre. They might have bizarre requirements for to obtain their help, but generally speaking, they are support characters, and these kind of characters might be more helpful to introduce if there's a lower number of hunters that are playing a scenario. The next question is, what are common pitfalls that people hit when they're trying to make a tabletop RPG? How do you balance out mechanics so that they are intuitive and engaging? I think Alberto's point of view here is that the rules do not make very clear who does what. What are the narrative authorities at the table? What is the storyteller supposed to say? When is it supposed to say it? When do the players have input? When they do not have an input? And it seems pretty straightforward, but many games do not make this clear. And that's something we are trying to avoid. So writing rules that people can understand and follow, and they kind of produce the same outcome every time, it's very hard for role play games. It's easier for board games, but it's a bit more challenging for role play games because there's a huge part of improvisation involved. The next question is about what inspired Broken Tales, and then also when writing the scenarios, what were important points that the writers needed to always integrate. As for the sources of inspiration, Alberto mostly reference some comics and books, for example, Fables, you might know that one, Once Upon a Time, Lullaby, and I think there's also this manga called Moonlight Act. In Japanese, it's called Geku Jorei. I probably horribly murdered the Japanese pronunciation. It's from the same author of Ushio and Tora, if you know that one. And it is fairy tale related. Because it's a manga, most of the problems there are solved beating the crap out of corrupted fairy tales. We didn't want to go fully in that direction, but it has been a huge influence for Alberto in developing the concept of Broken Tales, and he strongly recommended recommend it. I read a couple of other mangas from the same author. I haven't read this one, but he's definitely talented. And if you read Ushio Tora and Tora, I would recommend that one as well. It made me cry a couple of times. So, and that doesn't happen very often with comics. The next question. Oh no, sorry, I'm skipping ahead. He also answered the second part of the question. So, what were the important points that writers needed to always integrate? So it's saying that the main thing was not to just invert the plot of the story, because then it would be easy to guess and it wouldn't be that interesting. So the important part was to try to figure out what the secondary characters would do in this situation and make them do more interesting things. Now we go into spoiler scenario here, but if you read the quick start scenario, Iskra, Redwood Iskra, you will notice how we didn't made Red Riding Hood the bad guy in the story, but it is more complicated than that, and that's what we've been trying to do for every single story we took to the breaking point. So that's the general philosophy. We don't want people to guess what's going to happen when they play, and well, if they know the title of what they're going to play, they might start to guess something. If they don't know it, they might be quite surprised of the developments. Then the next question is about were there any stories or characters that the developers were adamant would not make a good dark presence. I think Alberto's been trying to figure out what to do with the Snow Queen from the Anderson fairy tale, and we couldn't find any good angle to approach that. It's a good fairy tale. It just doesn't work very well with this concept of broken tales. So that is one. And then of the characters that were developed, which one is our favorite? I think so. For Alberto, he's saying the Woman from the Wood, which is inspired by the witch from Hansel and Gretel. The character still has descriptors and powers that are related to hunger, so you will see them when we release the character sheet. And then he likes the cunning fox. I need to check if that's the way we translated it. And his favorite, the cunning fox, the idea of the cunning fox is that she's always giving you good advice in exchange for really bizarre requests. And I'm looking forward to see what he comes up with. We haven't detailed it yet because it is a stretch goal, but he mentioned what he wants to do with it, and it sounds very interesting. As for the treasure, it's the mirror of 1,000 desires that allows you to see the past and the future and the present or even the future. I need to check what was the full description. So when it comes to me, what I'm interested in seeing, one is the hunter Babai, which is inspired by the boogeyman, because we decided that he will be represented like some kind of judge. And we've been discussing a graphic design that reminds some masks from the Venetian Carnival. I happen to come from that area. I'm very familiar with that kind of aesthetic. I'm looking forward to see if actually we go in that direction or there are some changes. But also the name Babai, it's very close to the Italian babao, which is the translation of boogeyman, and it's also the way Inquisition judges were called. So there's a lot of interesting semantic arguments to make there for Babai, the judge. So that's something I'm looking forward to. And then when it comes to dark presences, I think Sherazad, that was unlocked during the campaign, sounds super interesting because she is a storyteller herself. She will be part of our meta narrative. She's an emissary of the one that plots in the shadows. She knows what the hunters have been doing. It is somewhat above the narration. And it's like she's a secondary author of the story that the hunters are living. So I think we're doing something quite interesting with that. And I find it very exciting. Also, I do like a lot how Daniel drew her. I think it's one of the prettiest pictures that we have. It's a bit more classical than others, maybe closer to some fairy tale illustration, but I really like it. It's my desktop background, and I also have it on my phone, so that's how much I like it. And then when it comes to the treasures, I do like the old sword, which is based on Excalibur, because it comes with the rock attached. And it becomes this very clumsy weapon that people swing around. And it reminds me of a weapon that you could find in the Dark Souls series. And that somewhat, it's fun to think that you're going to swing this very unwieldy weapon over your head and just hit people or things with this giant rock, like it was some kind of mace. I like that. Next question. Have you heard of the folklore of the Hodag, a creature that hits bad children? So the answer is no. We didn't know about this. It looks like it's an American folklore creature. And with Alberto did tell me. Oh yeah, he said that okay, this would be interesting to it would be interesting to learn more about it. And yeah, our general focus here has been European fairy tales, with some little exception, just to spice things up a bit. But I think you can see immediately that there is potential to adapt stories and fairy tales and legends from your own area in this format. And in our Discord server, I think a lot of people already are discussing, hey, in my region there is this story and this would work great, or this village has this there's this legend tied to this village and this would work great. So definitely, if it's something that is culturally relevant to you and your players will recognize it, I encourage you to adapt it, because then it would be even more exciting to do that. I have to say that it's kind of curious, because there are some stories from where I come from, which is the Veneto area in Italy, that are extremely close to folk tales that you can find in the Nordics, in Sweden in particular. If some of you know the game Weizen, there are several creatures, for example the Skogra, that are extremely close to stories that I have from back home, and well, it's a bit unsettling, or yeah, I wonder how exactly people came up with the same kind of creatures in places that are so far from each other. Then the next question is will there be a campaign mode? The answer is yes. Let's see, I had some notes about it. Okay, the question was longer. I cut it here a bit. So it was asking originally if there will be a way to play a complete campaign, and if there would be a way to go from a beginning to an end of the overall story, right? So the answer here is that the book will give you a starting point, which is the fairy tale of the child savior. and the one that plots in the shadows, and the way he corrupted this wish that the child has in the beginning. And this fairy tale will be will connect everything if you want to. You don't have to use it, but it can be used as a thread to connect all the stories together. And Sherazade would be using Sherazade would be a middle point of a campaign, and we're also kind of trying to figure out what could be the end. Of course, there are our suggestions. You can tie the stories together how you want, but there will be some ways to tie things together in and have this kind of meta plot of this specific world of fairy tales, this new world of fairy tales. How does it all together? Who is it holding it together, and why? Right. So of course, maybe you want to play once in that way, and then you have a better idea, and we will give you guidelines to tie things together in a way that more or less makes sense. Of course, you have to keep in mind that everything here is fictional. We are not even trying to make it realistic. Many of the stories, if you go and look at the originals, they are not even from the same period, and we kind of cram them all into this 18th century Europe because they fit very well in there, but they wouldn't belong to the same period. And some of them we also decided to set them in a different place than they were originally set. For example, Hansel and Gretel, now it's set in Iceland, just because it was a cool setting. So the thing that keeps everything together is the order, is this squad of hunters that solves the problem of the broken ones. And now I am ranting, so maybe I move to the next question. Can the characters die? How much is luck involved in the mechanics of the system? I think this is our last question. So the answer is that the characters can die if you think it is the only possible outcome of that specific scene, and if it's cool enough for what is being told. But generally speaking, when they're inflicted the last wound, they are taken out of the scene. Like they won't be able to take part in the scene anymore. Maybe they faint, maybe they are badly wounded and can't take part to the action anymore. Maybe the hunters in their group need to drag them away from the battlefield or whatever. But as a general rule, they don't die if you don't want them to die. When it comes to luck, it's not so relevant in the system in Monad Echo, because the game allows you to decide how much you want to risk in any specific action. As I mentioned somewhere else, you can decide beforehand to what kind of outcome you are aiming to. So you can decide yourself how much of a risk you want to take for this specific action. And of course, you might be in a situation where you are completely out of soma, you don't have any descriptor that can be applied, and at that point you will have to roll a lot of dice, and the probability of things going horribly wrong becomes higher. But it's also part of the game to be a bit strategic about it. And well, maybe if the first time you end up in this situation, the second time you play, you will understand how to handle your resources a bit better. You roll dice mostly only when the narration in the story doesn't have very clear and obvious outcome. I think we should stop here for this second episode. I managed it to keep it in under 25 minutes, which is sort of a miracle. I hope these answers were useful. And well, please, again, let me know if you like this format. And if you have other questions, the survey is still open. Thank you, and see you on the campaign or on Discord. Bye-bye.